Okay, odd and even functions. You got to pay attention here because this is not something that you've probably seen before, and I have people with a lot of trouble with this because it's some concept, but they just can't remember it. Okay, you have to know that cosine functions are even, and because secant is a reciprocal of cosine, both of these are even functions. Okay. Sine and cosecant, tangent and cotangent are odd functions. Okay, what makes cosine an even function is that if you take the cosine of, let's say, 5, you'll get cosine of 5, and if you take cosine of -5, you'll still get cosine of 5, because it's symmetrical on the y-axis. It doesn't matter if you go to the left or right, as long as you go the same distance. If I go over this much on the x-axis, I get to this point on the y-axis. If I go over this much, the same distance on the negative side of the y-axis, I come up, I get to the same point on the y-axis. If I go, let's say, this far over, this would be actually 1 pi. If I go 1 pi over on the x-axis, I come to the -1. If I go over a negative pi, I also get to -1. So it's the same on both sides. That's what this is saying. No matter which side I go, if I go positive or negative, I come up on the same thing on the y-axis. The sine, however, the sine, since it starts at the origin, by the way, these two are the same graph. You see how it curves? They're exactly the same except of the phase shift. This starts at the top, cosine starts at the top and then moves down like this. And sine starts from the origin and goes up like this, but they're the same graph. But this is not symmetrical on the y-axis. You see it's not symmetrical, but there's a relationship. It's just opposite. So it's always the opposite. If you put a negative in here, you're going to get a negative sign. So if you go over, let's say, like +1, or that would be a bad example, positive 1/2 pi, you're going to be at +1. Or if you go over -1/2 pi, you're going to get a -1. So that's what makes them opposites. Same thing with cotangent. Tangent and cotangent. If you go to the right, you end up. If you go to the left, you end up down. You go up to the right this much, you end up going up here. If you go to the right the same distance to the left, you go down that much. So it's going to be opposite. So use the value of the trig function to evaluate the indicated function. So what is if cosine of theta is equal to -3/4? If some angle, cosine of some angle gives you -3/4, what's the cosine of the negative of that angle? Well, I know that this is an even function, so it doesn't change the sign of this. If this was positive, the negative theta would give me a positive 3/4. What about secant? Secant goes sign-wise. It's also an even function, just like cosine. So the negative sign here doesn't matter. So what will this equal? Remember that secant is a reciprocal cosine, and the negative sign doesn't matter. So it will still be -4/3 because it's a reciprocal of this, and that the sign doesn't change anything. The sign on the theta does not change the result, the sign of the result. Okay, tangent. Now tangent is an odd function, so if tangent theta is equal to 1/2, what is the negative theta? Tangent of negative theta? Well, it's going to be 1/2, but now the sign is going to be the opposite because it's odd. Okay, so now if tangent of theta is 1/2, then the tangent of negative theta is -1/2. What about cotangent? Well, cotangent is a reciprocal of this, and since positive theta gave me 1/2, then negative theta on cotangent will give me a -2 because this was positive and it's a reciprocal of this one. Okay. Email question number 3. if sine theta is 1/2, what is the sine of negative theta? Okay.